Let's bring in Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report, friend of the show, a contributor. Jake, what do you make of what the Browns have done so far in this legalized tampering, the beginning of free agency, if you will?
Yeah, I think they've done some really interesting things, especially, with Sheldon Richardson. I thought it was the right kind of deal, I think, for their situation, especially getting a player opposite, Larry Ogunjobi, who can take the burden off of him. But you feel pretty good, too, about how it looks like that contract structured. It might be here in the front of that cap-loaded structure set up, and that could help the Browns when they go to sign their players a little bit later. So you feel good about that $21 million instead of the $34-ish million. So the Browns can take advantage of that late, maybe 2-year out in that contract. But Sheldon is a very good football player, a very quick twitch, really good playing at pad level, really good getting after the quarterback to play the run too. Was the right fit that was on the market that made sense next to Larry Ogunjobi. Obviously, bringing back Rashad Perriman is important for them, playing the X position, which is a vital position for the Browns in that offense. $4 million, very fair deal for them too. Do you feel good about that number as well?
Are you impressed with the way they have not gone crazy and overspent? There's some eye-opening contracts that are being reported out there. Do you think they've kind of maintained what they wanted to do, their plan, if you will?
Yeah, it seems like it. It does seem like that. I think people get a little bit confused with how much money they actually have. The rollover cap is from years past. That gives them an opportunity for the next calendar year to take advantage of an inflated budget, but it doesn't go year to year to year. So those players, maybe like C.J. Mosley, Anthony Barr, some of those big-name players that we've seen come off the market, and maybe are guys that they don't feel like they can afford going into the future, as they want to keep a lot of the guys that they have, which is understandable for a team that is looking at building a longest window as possible. So, I would give them an applause for showing some restraint in the free agency market, especially with the likes of maybe Tyrell Williams, who's out there still as well. Some of those wide receivers who we've seen go off the market is pretty good job by them so far. I do think it's setting up for, I know everybody's talking about in Cleveland, the opportunity to bring in a big name wide receiver from the East Coast.
Jake, did you expect the market to be better for Perriman? Or are you surprised that he got the deal that he got and didn't leave town?
Great question. I think that we all presume that he's going to have a little bit more of an opportunity out there, but the wide receiver market's been a little bit strange. The numbers have looked interesting for some guys like Cole Beasley, John Brown, but it hasn't been necessarily a big guaranteed money situation, and it hasn't been spread out over multiple years. I think most teams are, valuing the wide receivers on this market as guys who can just maybe don't have the guarantee over the long term. They don't, maybe we don't know how long they're going to perform at the level that they're performing, but we do feel like they might be able to contribute immediately. The name that everybody was most interested in is Tyrell Williams, and the fact that he is now into day 3. If he doesn't get signed tonight, day 3 of free agency without a contract in the 11, 12 million a year range he was looking for, tells you where most teams are valuing these free agents. So I would imagine Perriman went into free agency with the idea he could get multiple years, maybe close to 12 million on the total number, but it hasn't panned out. And the Browns did a nice job in being patient, showing him that market over the first day, and then saying, hey, man, we're still here. We still want you to come back on a prove-it deal. And it made sense for everybody involved.
In your estimation, should the Sheldon Richardson acquisition change what the Browns do with either number 17 or their second-round pick?
I don't think so, but I think that they make that signing so that they don't have to go into the draft with the idea of we need this guy because of position. And that's a really nice luxury to have, because instead of going into pick 17 and saying, do we decide between Christian Wilkins and do we decide between maybe Jeffrey Simmons coming off this ACL tear, they don't have to do that now. They can look at what's the best player available that can help us, whether it's a corner, whether it's a linebacker, or whether it's an offensive tackle. That's somebody that they can take and feel comfortable about that.
Yeah, and in that same vein, how about the Zeitler trade? Would you expect that means they're going to go offensive line early in this draft?
I would expect them to at least entertain the idea of a veteran interior offensive guard center type to challenge them, not just because of the Zeitler situation, but because J.C. Treader comes up in another year. They might be looking to bring some guys in who they can kind of project over the long haul. But I do certainly think that in the middle rounds, round 2, 3, 4, that they will look for an interior player somebody that can provide some insurance to not only Treader, but can come in right away. And if he can plays well enough, he can compete with, Corbett at right guard to take that position.
Jake Burns from the Orange and Brown Report joining Bud and I. Jake, all right, let's cut to the chase. What are you hearing about Odell Beckham Jr.? And you keep hearing the national people who have the people inside organizations talking about it. That must mean there's at least a little bit of legs to that.
Yeah, it seemed like last week it started to gather some buzz from some folks sort of behind the scenes, maybe people that aren't as well known on a national level. But you have people who write for, the New Jersey-based newspapers. You obviously have Chris Mortensen confirm Josina Anderson's report about the Browns booking around. Here's what I know. I feel very confident in saying that the Browns have at least engaged New York with entertaining offers, that if New York is serious about moving on from him, they have the opportunity to do so. The Browns have put the ball in New York's court. They presented them with probably what is the best option for a trade, because there's not many teams on the market that would be in that shape to offer up a ton of draft capital and also still have the salary cap to absorb that situation. The Browns are one of the few who have that ability, because if you say, look at San Francisco, another team that's been linked, they have the number 2 pick. I don't think they want to move the number 2 pick for Odell Beckham. The Browns, on the other hand, have 17, and they can look to say, hey, we can give you something now, we can give you something later, and we can afford this guy for the foreseeable future, so it makes sense for us, and we can maybe provide you with some defensive depth on the side of the ball that you guys are struggling to maybe replace some guys, as free agency has been pretty devastating to them in some positions too. So it does make sense. I'm not here to say that this is going to happen. I think everybody's trying to handle this with caution, but I feel very confident saying that John Dorsey and the Browns are actively pursuing him. Does that mean a deal gets made? No, nobody really knows, but it does make sense on the Browns end for sure. Now the Giants have to decide, does this make sense for us? Because if we're keeping Eli Manning here for another year, which is what the rumor is, they're very committed to doing, how does it make much sense to let Odell Beckham, his best receiver, go in that situation? So they got to really decide, are they into this or are they tanking?
Yeah, Jake, you may have heard us talking about it leading into your spot, but if they would trade him, what is the cap implications for New York if they trade Beckham?
I'm just an English major, so I'm not great at the cap. I will say that I have heard is it's something closer to 16. Now, I know there's a date involved in this where it can become more impact for the cap after June 1st. But if it's before June 1st, I think that they can cut it to a certain level, and there might be the potential to spread it out. But again, I'm not the capologist. I'm just kind of hearing and reading and saying what everybody else is saying. But it does feel to me like the things that I've heard from people that I trust on that matter is that making a deal before June 1st still makes a lot of sense for both teams involved.
Well, I just want you to know that among the three of us, you are the cap expert.
Exactly. We have ordained you the capologist.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble.